The first bottle arrived swaddled in straw and bound with red wax that smelled faintly of copper even before I cracked the seal. I had not ordered it, and the return address on the wooden crate was only a stylized sigil, 3 interlocking crescents burned into the plank. I took it as an invitation. For 10 years I had written enological columns that disguised themselves as travel writing, always hunting a story that might free me from the magazine's pastel pages. The label on the bottle simply read, Les 3 nuits, mais les aimants inconnus. The scent under the cork, violets, and something darker, like wet iron, told me this was no publicity stunt. So when a second package arrived, this one containing a handwritten card that said, If you desire more, come before the harvest's last moon, I booked a train south to the valley of Arques. A driver met me at the station with an engine that smelled of old horses and new gasoline. He spoke little, glancing often at the rearview mirror as if to ensure I had not vanished. We left the tourist roads and climbed terraced hills riddled with limestone caves. Vineyards spread in every direction, but only one track wound upward toward a stand of black cypresses, crowning the ridge. Behind them rose a manor of faded sandstone, whose windows showed no light. The driver stopped beside a gate engraved with the same 3 crescents. He did not wait for a gratuity, nor for permission, merely unlatched the trunk and set my bag at my feet. I pushed through a corridor of hedges and emerged onto rows of vines heavy with near-purple fruit. At the center of the parcels, 4 stone cisterns fed an irrigation system of shallow channels. The water that flowed there was thick as broth and the color of rust. When a gust stirred the surface, the liquid clung to itself in viscous threads before falling sluggishly back. My throat tightened. Vineyard earth often stains water reddish with tannins and clay, but this looked like no runoff I had ever seen. A man greeted me from a pergola near the manor. He was slight, in a linen suit that might once have been white, though faint rosy spatters marbled the cuffs. Mademoiselle Blythe, he said, pronouncing the Y like a soft I. I am Sébastien Leroux, caretaker of Domaine des Trois Nuits. We are honored you accepted. I should have asked how he knew my name, but reporters learned to accept coincidences as doorways. He escorted me into the manor's refectory, whose vaulted ceiling was frescoed with scenes of lunar eclipses above grape harvests. A single long table waited, set for 2. At the head lay the bottle I had tasted in Paris. Beside it lay a black leather journal latched with brass. Tonight, Leroux said, you will sample 3 vintages. After each glass, you will record what you experience. Nothing more is required. Experience, I echoed. You will understand. He filled the first glass. The wine's color was almost opaque, tilted to brown at the rim like old blood. Its aroma mixed plum, jam, gunpowder, and rosemary. I took 1 sip, and the room inverted. I stood barefoot on salted boards of a whaling ship, wind slashing my eyes with brine. My body was not my own. I was broad, bearded, 17 stone. A harpoon rope burned across my palms, while a leviathan below dragged our skiff toward a wall of ice. The rope snapped. The backlash took my left arm at the shoulder. Blinding pain, vertigo, arterial spray. My last sight was the aurora curtaining the stars. Then the world collapsed into cold light. I came back vomiting onto the refectory floor. Sebastian knelt silently, dabbing my lips with a cloth scented of lavender. When I could breathe, he pointed to the journal. My hands shook, but I wrote, Arctic, 1883, seaman's death, rope recoil, amputation, exsanguination, aurora. Very good, he said. You did not forget the light. Most forget. Drink water. The second vintage must follow before the memory cools. I wanted to protest, demand explanation, run yet another voice, deeper, already craved the impossible intimacy of that death. My whole career I had listened to strangers unwrap their traumas over regional cheeses and cellar tours, knowing I could only approximate their sensations in print. Here was total communion, if at a price. I rinsed my palate. He poured again. This time the glass smelled of black cherries and chapel incense. I braced myself. The moment the wine touched my tongue, I was kneeling on stone, wrists bound behind me. Torches hissed. A hooded tribunal intoned verses in Latin. I tasted blood where my teeth had cut my cheek. An executioner approached, laid my head upon chilled iron. The blade fell. Consciousness flew upward, like a bird startled from reeds, glimpsing my body twitch, headless on the floor before darkness slammed shut. I awoke screaming. Sebastian placed a hand over mine. Breathe down the spine, he instructed, as though coaching pranayam. When I calmed, I wrote, Inquisition? Spain? Beheading? Torchlight? Latin Psalm 51? Smell of frankincense. The third vintage he uncorked with reverence, whispering to the bottle as though it answered. I hesitated longer, but some treacherous part of me thirsted. The vision that seized me was brief. I dangled from a tree in springtime, and lynched while dogwood petals drifted like snow. The rope still creaked after I had gone silent. From my fixed eyes I saw two children hiding behind a wagon wheel, their tears bright on brown cheeks. When I returned, Laurent fetched a blanket and sat opposite. Now you know our secret, he said. The vines drink history. Each harvest we bury the blood of the newly dead into the roots. Their final moments infuse the grapes and the wine becomes a reliquary. My voice came hoarse. How? He shrugged. How does yeast become intoxication? Some transubstantiations require no explanation, only faith. I asked whose blood fed the vines. Volunteers, he said. Those with incurable illness, condemned prisoners, wanderers who seek anonymity. The law of the valley permits private rights older than the Republic. All gifts are given freely. I did not believe him, but my heartbeat still galloped from that garden of dogwoods. I excused myself to a guest room cured in cedar. Sleep did not come. Each time my eyelids sagged, nooses and savers waited behind them. Near dawn, I opened the window for air. Below, on a courtyard flagged in slate, 4 figures lugged a sloshing barrel toward the cisterns. One stumbled, the contents streaked crimson across the stones. The liquid glinted too, viscous for wine. I lay back, heart drumming, until sun frisked the curtains. At breakfast, Laurent served coffee thick as tar. Tonight, he said, we will taste the current vintage. But first you may walk the parcels. Let the vines sense you. Outside, dew still jeweled the leaves. I crouched to study the soil. Flies orbited something sweet-sour. Beneath the mulch, a smear of scarlet soaked into pumice. A crow perched, head cocked, as if waiting its turn. My quest for exposité stirred. If I could prove human blood sustained the crop, authorities would descend. Yet an admission thrummed beneath. I wanted to taste again. The visions horrified me, but they also granted impossible empathy, a wormhole into strangers' endings. I imagined a whole archive of such wine. One could rewrite history, reclaim silenced voices. The thought convicted me more surely than any tribunal. That afternoon I explored the chateau's library, hoping for records. Dusty ledgers bore entries back to 1537. Each harvest annotated numbers. Leaders sang real fornies and initials. The last pages, however, were blank. In their place lay a sealed envelope addressed to me. Inside was a single sentence. The vineyard chooses chroniclers, not critics. Signed with 3 crescents. Evening brews the valley violet. In the refectory, 2 additional guests had joined the table, a corpulent magistrate named Bellieu and a waif-like concert pianist called Amahan Reyes. Both, I learned through cautious conversation, had also received unasked-for bottles months prior. They too had come seeking understanding. Alarm rooted me. The vineyard courted more than journalists. It lured witnesses from varied spheres. Sebastian entered wearing a sash the color of dried claret. He carried a decanter that smoked faintly. From the irrigation drawn at equinox, he announced. Unaged but potent. He served the magistrate first. Bellius sipped and convulsed. His eyes rolled back. He seized the tablecloth, nails digging. Sweat flooded his collar. When he recovered, he whispered, "Old woman? Cancer ward?" Her lungs drowning. I felt every gurgle. Tears hung in his waxy lashes. Emahan raised her glass with trembling elegance. Moments after drinking, she gasped, "Car crash, underpass outside Manila, steering column through my chest." I watched traffic ignore the wreckage. She gripped her ribs as if staunching phantom punctures. It was my turn. I lifted the glass, but before it touched my lips, I caught Laurel studying me with hunger. I set it down. "No," I said. Silence thickened. "The vintage cannot reveal itself piecemeal," he replied gently. "You must complete the triad. I'll taste nothing more until you prove the deaths are willing," I said. "Show me a living donor, someone who offers blood freely." "An hour hence," he said after a pause, "meet me at the Western Grotto." The magistrate watched him depart, then leaned in. "If he shows you anything, record it. The Ministry's Office of Mystical Anomalies has tried for years to infiltrate this estate. They invited me, hoping judicial authority might pry it open." "Why continue drinking then?" I asked. He stared at his shaking hands. "Because the dead deserve a witness." I found Laurel, where the vineyard met limestone cliffs. Stalactites dangled like fangs. Inside the grotto, candles ringed a wooden tub half filled with the same thick liquid. At its rim stood a gaunt woman in a hospital gown, intravenous line taped into her crook. Her eyes were sunken, yet fierce. "I am Odette," she said before I could speak. "Cancer has eaten my marrow. Tomorrow I would die in hospice, nameless. Here I may become immortal flavor. I have signed release." She proffered a trembling page laden with notarized stamps. Nurses, if the word applied, guided her into the tub. Blood and saline mingled roseate around her thighs. She recited a vow, "May those who drink remember." A man in monk's robe opened a vein at her wrist. The fluid steamed in the cave's chill. Odette's pulse fluttered in her neck, then stopped. A bell chimed thrice. Her body slid beneath the surface, staining it mahogany. I vomited against the wall. Laurel did not console me this time. "Your proof," he said. "Now drink." I stumbled back to the manor, mouth tasting of bile and guilt. The pianist and magistrate had retired, leaving the decanter alone on the table. Candlelight painted its contents the shade of sunset behind storm clouds. I raised the glass, intending to pour it out, yet some gravity stronger than conscience tipped it to my lip. Instantly, I was Odette, floating in warmth that turned to icy bloom. Pain receded like a tide, replaced by wonder. I felt vines drinking my essence through capillary mouths. Roots threaded my arteries, sap mingling with plasma. My consciousness diffused into cambium, into leaf. I saw morning sunlight I would never again see with eyes, felt it instead as sugar rising, and farther, deeper, I sensed centuries of other deaths entwined, a chorus of final breaths fermenting in the dark. We were legion, and we were wine, waiting to be tasted. I came back sobbing. The glass slipped, the crimson pooled on floorboards like an accusation. I ran to my room, but sleep again eluded me. At dawn, the vineyard hummed with flies, fat from coppery nectar. During breakfast, Bellieu announced he would return to Paris that day. The pianist, conversely, intended to stay as apprentice. "I heard symphonies in those deaths," she said softly. The rogue greeted both choices with equanimity. He turned to me last. "And you, chronicler?" "I need air," I answered. I hiked above the vineyards to a ruined watchtower. From there, the parcels resembled an open palm, irrigation lines its veins. The sea glittered distant. I recalled Odette's surrender, the peace I had borrowed from her extinction. For an instant, I envied it. Then I remembered the children beneath the dogwood, the sailor's blown-off arm, the unchosen, The violent, the coerced. How many truly volunteered? How many were offered as tribute? A plan rooted. That night, we were invited to witness the pressing. Grapes heaped in stone vats. Barefoot workers trod. Their calves splattered scarlet. Candles fluttered in alcoves shaped like skulls. While the others watched, I slipped away, carrying a lantern and a flask of high-proof grape spirit I had stolen from the cellar. I doused the driest rows, vines that thirsted for any fluid, alcohol-soaked leaves dripped to ground. I struck a match. Flames slithered along trellises, leaping vine to vine. The first screams came from birds exploding out of nests. Wind sheared sparks across the slope, igniting the cypress windbreak. Workers shrieked. Bells clanged. Lo Rao intercepted me near the pergola, clothes already flecked with embers. "You misunderstand," he pleaded. "Burning them will not end it. Roots go deep, deeper than fire reaches." "But bottles break," I said. I hurled the lantern against the refectory wall. Glass burst, oil blossomed fire. Inside, stacks of oak barrels whooshed one after another like organ pipes igniting. He lunged, knife flashing. We grappled. The blade opened my forearm. Blood pattered the thirsty soil. I felt the earth lap it up. A grin warped Laura's mouth. "See? It welcomes you." I head-butted him, felt cartilage crack. He dropped. I staggered toward the cisterns, intent on kicking in their rims. Yet dizziness sluiced through me. My cut bled hard. Each pulse fed the ground that smoked with heat. The vineyard seemed to sing 1,000 death voices urging, "Spill, spill, join us." Knees buckled. I collapsed at the base of a vine, now glowing ember red. Sap hissed where flames seared bark. I pressed my wound, but blood streamed between fingers. The soil below turned to dark paste, sucking greedily. Smoke eclipsed the sky. My lungs clawed for air. In the moment before I lost consciousness, I felt roots pierce my skin, not cruelly, almost tender, threading into vein. Somewhere distant, barrels detonated. But closer, inside, a harvest began. How long passed before I awoke, corked inside a new bottle I will never know. I exist now as flavor, awaiting discovery. I sense cool glass around me and beyond, wooden slats, a crate bound for ports unknown. Voices drift like far thunder auctioneers, collectors, perhaps an eager columnist uncaging straw. I cannot speak, but I can dream. In dream I hover over an oak table where 3 strangers sit. A cork eases free with a sigh. Wine splashes into goblets, releasing aroma of smoke, salt, and dogwood bloom. One of the drinkers raises the glass, and with the first sip, my final night floods her nerves. The heat, the blade, the roaring vines. Through her heart I burn again, yet also I pour into her memory every death I carry. Sailor and seaman, gallow victim and cancered martyr, an endless river of endings. She lowers the glass, pallid, stunned. Someone asks what she felt. With my words in her mouth, she answers, "The vineyard chose a new chronicle." I taste her resolve swirl with dread. Perhaps she will torch the warehouses, outlaw the cult, or perhaps she will sip again, craving the forbidden sacrament. Whatever she decides, the vines have already sprouted elsewhere, taking root in some hidden soil fed by ritual. Death, like terroir, travels in the blood, and blood, once spilled, has always been thirsty.